Hello and welcome to Wolfman Gaming. This is my Uncharted 4 Crushing Difficulty walkthrough, and this is chapter 18, also known as New Devon. And this video is part 1 out of 2. Because this is also one of those chapters, I decided to divide into 2 videos. Because in its entirety it would be around 37 minutes, which is still below the 40-minute mark. But it is a very long video. And most people don't want to watch a video for 40 minutes, so I decided to divide it into 2. And the biggest reason why this video is so long is the first fight in this chapter. There are 2 big fights. And the first fight can actually be skipped. You can sneak through it, just kill a minimum amount of enemies and continue on your merry way. But if you decide to do that, you will be in a lot of trouble in the second fight of this chapter. So that's why I decided to do it, because in this first fight you have the ability to pick up 2 China Lakes and a Baroque 44. And that is something I really want going into the second fight. Because in the second fight there are quite a few heavies, a lot of enemies overall, and it is quite a cramped area. And bringing power weapons and explosives is gonna make that fight a whole lot easier than it would be if you didn't do it.
Watch your head.
But we are soon coming up to the first fight, and the strategy I use for this is quite simple. It's not a very quick strategy, but it makes this fight significantly easier. And what we are gonna do going into it right now, you're gonna see a little transition there. I'm not quite where you start off if you go out from that animation, because it took me 2 or 3 tries to get through this. But part 1 of this fight, or the first strategy, is to try and stealth kill as many enemies as possible. And I don't have a 100% consistent strategy in which pattern I take them out. But the bottom line is to try to stealth kill as many of them as you can. And if you don't have a Mettler rifle like I do right now, try to pick one up, because when we get spotted, which I will be, I'm gonna retreat back to a big tree at the beginning of this area, where you're more or less completely safe, and I'm gonna try to take out as many enemies as possible from that position. And when things calm down again, I'm gonna move in. I'm gonna do another few stealth kills, and when I get detected the second time, I'm gonna retreat back to the tree. And the tree is a really great cover, because enemies will not be able to hit you consistently there. Not enough to kill you most of the time, unless you get really unlucky and get shot by a sniper, which we all know is a one-hit kill. But most of them will have a hard time hitting you, and if they start getting their shots in at you, you will be able to hide behind a tree and they will not be able to kill you, and you can just wait for your health to regain. And also in this big area there is a guy with a China Lake. There is one that we will pick up from a crate, and there is a guy that uses one. And the great thing about standing behind that tree is that his grenades cannot hit you over there. And that is a really great thing, because that could put a quick stop to this run if he manages to hit you. But he won't, which is the best part about it. But since this video is quite long, and also, yes, that's something I need to mention. In this fight, we are introduced to a new enemy type. I think it's the first time in this game that they show up. And I'm not quite sure what the correct term for them is. There is one of the China Lakes, and we're gonna pick up one from the guy. He's over on the left side, I think, a heavy with a China Lake. But we're introduced to a new enemy type in this chapter. And I'm not quite sure what they're called. You can call them huggers. I like to call them fucking assholes. Because that's what they are. And you'll recognize them by the fact that they have gas masks on. And they usually carry fossas, those Uzi-like weapons. And what they like to do is run up to you and grab you and start holding you. So you're gonna need to bash, I think it's triangle, to break free from their grip. And if they hold you for too long, I think they break your neck or something like that. But the biggest problem is that when they grab you, they will hold you and all the enemies around you will be able to take pot shots at you. And I think this is the first time in the game they show up. I can't remember them being in a previous chapter at all. But they do spawn in both chapter 19 and 20. And they also were in Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. And they are by far the worst enemy type in this entire game series. I can take a bunch of heavies or super heavies and tanks or whatever, as long as I don't have to fight those huggers, because those assholes are fast. Don't ever underestimate the threat they pose. That is something you need to be aware of. And they will rush at you and they will try to dodge your bullets. And whenever they get close, they will grab you and you're basically dead. Especially in an area where there are so many enemies as there are in this one. But now that I've gone over that, it gives me time, since this fight is quite long, I'm gonna take some time to talk about a few other things. Actually, we are just days away from the release of God of War now. The reviews have gone up, and it's a really good sign. Also, quick note there. You saw the Baroque icon. Remember that is there. Because when I play this, you're gonna see a transition at the end of this fight. And that is because I was running around this battlefield for around 10 minutes looking for the Baroque and I could not find it. But it's down there by that platform where I just were. So make a note of that so you don't have to spend as much time after the fight in this area as I did. But going back to God of War, the reviews are out. And something that made me really happy or brought on the hype a little bit more was that I read that they released the press kits like 2 weeks before release. And they gave their permission to all gaming sites or magazines or whatever to post their reviews a week in advance to release of the game. And that shows that Santa Monica Studios are quite confident in their product, and it seems to have paid off in the reviews, because the ones that I read are unanimous in the fact that it seems to be a really great game. IGN gave it 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, and Game Reactor gave it 10 out of 10. But that is something that actually bugs me a little bit. Now I'm starting to sound like I'm being negative just for negativity's sake. But giving a game a 10 out of 10, that means, in my opinion, if you give that game a perfect score, that means the game is perfect in every aspect. And I have yet to come across a game that is perfect in every aspect. A lot of my friends would probably say that, well, what about The Last of Us? And yes, The Last of Us, I think it is a really great game, one of my favorite games of all time. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have flaws. It does. It does have a few of them. For example, the boss fight against David. I hate it. It's well designed, but it's unnecessarily hard when you're playing it on at least the higher difficulties. But since we are just a few days away from release, it's gonna be released on Friday, I think it's the 20th. Might be. Should be. And I pre-ordered it since months back, so it's good that the reviews are great, because it gives me hope that my money have been well invested. And I'm gonna find out next weekend. I have cleared my schedule and I'm gonna play the shit out of that game, because as you may know, I'm a huge fan of the God of War series overall. I have all the games in the series. I have played through them multiple times. The only one that I didn't really like, or I didn't dislike it, but I didn't think it was as good as the other ones, was Ascension, the last game that was released. I think it came out on PS3. Because it felt a little bit tired, but now they're taking the game in a new direction. It seems to be a bit more role-playing. Someone made a little comparison to Dark Souls. I don't think they mean so much the difficulty, but that the game setup or the mechanics of the game are a bit similar to that series. But I'm gonna find out in a few days. I'm gonna try to do an unboxing video, because I pre-ordered the huge, it's called Stone Mason edition or something. It cost around $150. Expensive as hell, but you get a big figurine and lots of goodies that are probably totally useless, but it's always fun to treat yourself to one of those things. And I have also finished Far Cry 5. I did that the other day and got the platinum trophy for that game as well. Very simple platinum, and most of all, it's a very fun game. I am really impressed with it. I've talked about it in some of my previous videos, the fact that they started to do, or they changed a few things that made the game feel fresh again. And I really enjoyed it, and I really recommend it. If you want to have a good time, play it. Because it has great variety, and I'm really glad that they skipped the fact that you need to hunt a lot of animals. Because that has been a staple in that game series for years, that if you want to make new bags and new quivers and ammo bags or socks or whatever, a lot of species of animals had to go completely extinct, and you were the executioner to take them out. That is something they've changed in this. They completely rebuilt the perk system, which was really fun, because it allowed you to play the game much more as you wanted to play it. You could more or less build your character to fit your playing style. And I'm apparently having a lot of trouble hitting that guy over there. That is why the Metler is so great to have in this fight. Because you can zoom in a little bit and it only fires single shots. So you don't have to waste by shooting barrages of bullets at targets that are very far away. And now you need to be a bit more careful, because now I think the huggers, yes, there is one over on the left side, they are starting to make an appearance. So I just popped in, shot one guy in the face, picked up another grenade. Don't think I picked up any more ammo. Yes, I decided I picked up another rifle. Yes. Because that's something you're gonna have to do at times. If your aiming is as bad as mine was, which it hopefully isn't. I think I recorded this the same day as I recorded chapter 17, and I was, as I mentioned in my previous videos, I was starting to get frustrated, I was starting to get tired of this game. Just because the design of that elevator fight. Without ranting on for too long about it, I ranted on quite a lot about it in the videos concerning it. But I still think that that fight is one of the absolutely worst fights in this game and in this series. And to some extent it actually affected my playing ability or skill or whatever, whichever is the most correct term, when it came to this fight. I could probably have done this a little bit faster if my aiming had been better. But that is always the thing, isn't it? If my aiming had been better and or if your aiming is better, everything will go faster. If you never miss a shot and you are godlike at shooting, you always win. But the great thing about this video not being around perfect shots and perfect aiming shows that even if you aren't a super gamer, you can still make it through this. And as I've talked about earlier, you can, if you have played through the game, or at least once before, and picked up a few of the collectibles, if you want to, you can pick up or you can use tweaks, which will make this go significantly faster. But if you want to do it in an honest way, so to speak, don't do it, and it can still be done. This video is proof of that, and also there are lots of videos of YouTube people covering this game. Because this game series, even on its highest difficulty, they aren't really super hard games. They are very challenging most of the time. I think by far that this is the hardest game in the series. That is probably something I've talked about earlier, but all in all, I think the second game is the absolute easiest, and this is by far the hardest. And all the difficulty in this game comes down to the lack of checkpoints when you're playing it on these difficulties, or on this difficulty. Because a lot of the fights are very long. And that is also something that happened in the first game, that sometimes the fights were quite long and there weren't... But the biggest problem in that game was the fact that there were a few too many enemies. And they were extremely aggressive. Almost all the enemies would rush you and try to get into your cover. And that made the second game a bit too easy, and here we have him. That is a hugger. Remember what he looks like and stay out of his path. Because you can see they are quite fast, they like running. Most of the other enemies usually just walk. But those huggers, they will rush you, they will kill you, and probably sodomize your corpse afterwards. Because that's the kind of guys they are. Horrible persons. And they need to die. But also something that you should remember, which I should probably have mentioned earlier in this video. If you go into water, this is actually a great area to do it. If you go underwater and stay hidden beneath these floorboards, enemies will lose track of you quite quickly, and they will go into their semi-alerted status, where they sweep the area, being quite attentive, but they will not know exactly where you are, so you will lose their aggro, and then you can use that to your advantage to maybe sneak up like I'm doing now, try to get in a few shots, take out one or two, jump down into the water once again, hide behind or hide beneath the floor, and that can help you also. Maybe it could even shorten this fight a little bit. But I think we are starting to get close to the last part of it. Because when we have taken out most of the enemies in this area, there are, I think it's 4 snipers at the back end of this giant place. No, we have 2 huggers left, and I'm gonna use a grenade. I'm gonna invest a grenade in taking one of them out. And it actually worked great because, no, I didn't even manage to stealth kill him. That is what happens when huggers get on you. And now I was shitting bricks. That is extremely scary, and that's exactly what I mean about how dangerous those guys are. Did you see that? I got so lucky because he grabbed me. I had 2 laser sights on my back. I should have been dead. If it weren't for the fact that we all know this by now, this is something I mentioned numerous times, and you've probably come across it numerous times as well, that snipers in these games are the slowest bastards in the entire gaming history of enemies trying to kill you. Because if that hadn't been so, I would have been pulverized just due to that guy. That horrible guy, which I finally took out. And now it's easy, the last part, because now we are taking out all the attackers. All the ones that will try to rush you are dead. All that remains now are the snipers and one more guy, I think. One guy with a machine gun and 2 or 3 snipers. I know I said 4, but I think there are only 2 of them. So now we can take our time. Do not use the condor like I'm carrying right now, because we're gonna do some distance shooting. And a condor, which you may all know, is a shotgun. It's absolutely devastating on close range, not so much on long range. So I'm just trying to get a window now so I can go up on this platform and hopefully find a better weapon for what we're gonna engage in. So now I just want to assess the area, take a quick peek around. So we have the status of this. There are 3 guys. No, there are 4 guys. Missed that guy on the right. There are 3 guys, at least 2 of them have sniper rifles, which makes them the least dangerous enemies in this area. And I have a trusty para, which has 30 bullets, which should be more than enough to take out these people. But if you get 2 of them to gang up, you can do like I did right there and throw in a grenade. There are quite a few grenades scattered across this battlefield, and that is something I want to... that cannot be said enough. The next fight coming up towards the end of this chapter is really hard. To make that fight significantly easier, make sure to raid this battlefield before you move on. I will pick up 2 China Lakes and the Baroque 44. And that is the strategy I like to use going into the next fight. It will make it so much easier, and you saw a transition right there. Because I was running around here for, I think it's around 10 minutes. Just because I couldn't find the Baroque. I knew I had seen it, but I couldn't remember where. So that's the only reason you saw a transition there. But we have gotten to the end of this video, and we're gonna see the next fight in the next video. But I want to thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in my next video. So until next time, this is the Wolfman signing off.